Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sharpest Call of Duty League podcast. My name is Robert, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, CDLMetrics. This is it. We've made it to the last week of Major 2, Week 6. We've got this on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Also, college basketball. March Madness starts technically we're recording this on Monday, so technically starts tomorrow with the first four. But later on in the week on Thursday, it all kicks off. So a lot going on this week.
Yeah, super exciting week. I'm a college basketball junkie, so this is one of my favorite weeks of the year. I'm also a huge Wisconsin Badgers fan, as someone from Wisconsin. They got a 5 seed, which I'm very happy about for the March Madness tournament. And they're actually going to Portland, Oregon, where my wife and I are going this weekend. For the last several years, we've gone to the round 2 games at a location that's somewhat near us, and Portland was the closest place. So we booked plane tickets months ago, and we did not think that Wisconsin would be there, but sure enough, they'll be there if they win on Thursday. So fingers crossed that they can get through for the first round. But yeah, we've got that. We've got the last week of major qualifiers coming up this weekend. Yeah, it's an exciting time for sure. And yeah, Major 2 already next weekend. So super excited to talk about it.
Yeah, so jumping right in, weekly recap. I did not have a great week. I went 1 for 2 again. This, which seemed too good to be true, was in fact too good to be true. For some reason, Minnesota just straight up lost against Carolina, which is weird because they then beat, Boston 3-1? Oh, yep. And they lost 3-0 to Carolina too. So I don't know how you square that. Weird things happen in the CDL this year. Usually when I get closing line value, but then Miami nicely picked up the -1. I think they swept Vancouver, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. That was a bit of a rough week for me, but those are probably some of the best value on the board. Maybe the bookies knew something there. I don't know. How did your picks go?
Yeah, so I went perfect, which doesn't happen much. I did have a couple -188s in there. A little easier to hit those, but still. Yeah, you and I went head-to-head on that Optic Paris stuff. Very close. It very easily could have gone in an Optic sweep. And I would say it went somewhat unexpected in that Paris. Part of the reason why I took the +1.5 was that I think their hard point can at least split against Optic. If not, maybe they bounce back and can win 2 of them, because for the longest time this year, Paris were far and away the best hardpoint team. Over the last few weeks, that's gotten shakier. And yeah, Optic actually won both hardpoints, but Paris barely won the map 2, barely won the map 3, and that alone was enough to get over the hump. And almost won the series in that map 5. Good on Paris for fighting. That's all I wanted them to do, and they fought like heck. So yeah, maybe Optic, they're undefeated in this major qualifier period, but maybe showing some signs of weakness here and there, but still far and away the best team in the league. The other 2, yeah, Vegas against Carolina, that was the last series of the weekend. Vegas has been struggling the last few weeks, but I just thought, hey, this is a clear mismatch in teams, and sure enough, they were able to sweep Ravens. And then, yeah, the last one, Riyadh versus Thieves. I took the +1.5 thinking Riyadh, very good hard point since the Major 2 qualifiers. Maybe that alone can get them to a map 5. Their search is shaky, but their overload I thought could compete, and yeah, they came out and swept Thieves. So really happy with those results overall, and I think it makes for an interesting last week of the Major 2 qualifiers here.
Moving on to the model plays, they fared better here. Cloud9 line +2.5. That was actually a really good call there against.
That was
Toronto. Yeah, that was a surprise. That was a really big surprise there. They did win map 2 there. Optic map 3, again, weirdly Paris did things. Minnesota moneyline, yeah, that didn't work. Vancouver moneyline, map 1, that didn't work. Toronto map 3, though, Cloud9, again, weird. They beat Toronto and then they lose. What was it? Not FaZe. Who was it? Was it FaZe?
For Cloud9, they lost to LA Thieves 3-1.
Thieves, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then Boston, Cloud9 map 3 didn't get the win there. Minnesota, no. Boston 3. Miami, though, moneyline, -1.5, map 2, map 3. Riyadh map 3, and then Vegas moneyline, those all cashed there. So, bit of a weird week on that, but that Cloud9 moneyline there against Toronto, that definitely helped the week for sure. So yeah, moving on to league news, here was the games from last week. Again, as we've talked about, a lot of 3-0s. A lot of these unexpected 3-0s. This one, Minnesota was the favorite, got 3-0'd. 3-0. This one, Thieves were the favorite, got 3-0'd, right? And again, it's weird. Miami 3-0'd Riyadh, and then Riyadh 3-0'd Thieves. And I'm fairly sure that Thieves and Heretics played, and like Thieves won, I think 3-1 or something. So,
yeah. No, it is hard to figure out. Yeah, and I'll dive into the numbers next week when we talk about Major 2, but this was just something we touched on last week. Was it feels like there are a lot of sweeps this year. Why is that? And the first thing I checked, there are a lot of sweeps this year. That is the truth. Like, the most common length of a series this year is a sweep, followed by a 4-map series, followed by a 5-map series. That does not happen, at least in the last few seasons. So some weirdness going on with that. Last week was no different, though. We did get some, half of the matches basically were sweeps. And yeah, again, some that you wouldn't think, like Riyadh and Miami, you would think are on the same tier. And honestly, like, that series very easily gone to a map 4. That map 1 was pretty close. The map 2 went to a round 11. Usually when maps are that close, one team gets one of each. But yeah, Miami were able to take both of those. Yeah, like even the Minnesota-Carolina series, like, those teams were priced at almost a coin flip. Again, the map 1 is close, but Ravens just parlay that together with a map 2 and a map 3, and there they go. And then, yeah, you mentioned the Riyadh versus Thieves one. That was another underdog coming through, a close map 1, parlay that into a map 2 and map 3 again. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see if this continues, but yeah, some interesting results pretty much every week for the last month. I feel like we've had some really interesting ones to look at.
Mm-hmm. Qualifier wins. Again, this is the last week of the qualifier. Again, Optic 10.6. I think that's because they lost to... No, they nearly beat Paris. They beat Paris. So they still are on pace for an undefeated qualifier. Miami, the number 2 overall seed. Again, very weird how this works. Boston and Cloud9, again, the bottom basically, in Vancouver right up there. Everyone else, look at this, from 3 to 8. Yes, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3 to 9. 3 to 9.
Yeah.
1. Basically, 1 win separating 3 to 9. And that includes the team that won the last major, and Vegas and Toronto. Basically, and even Thieves are in that category too. It's Optic and Miami. The only ones that have any sort of differentiation at this point.
Yeah, it is interesting to look at. I do think we're at the point now where Optic are more likely to get to 11 wins than not, which is insane, but they are, by far the best team in the league, and a couple of winnable matches this weekend. Yeah, like, Miami are red hot right now. They look like the favorite for the 2 seed, which I would not have predicted a few weeks ago, but here we are. And honestly, they might get there with just 7 wins. I think a couple more teams out of that middle of the pack might get to 7. Minnesota play twice, Thieves play twice, Falcons play twice. Any of those teams could get to 7. My numbers seem to say, like, they'll get 1, they'll lose 1, and a lot of them will get to 6 wins, and that could also be the case. But yeah, there's just a clear differentiation between Optic and everybody else right now, and some really interesting kind of bubble games, if you will, going into this week. That'll matter a lot. And then, the cut line right now looks like, to no surprise, it's Vancouver and Boston. Those teams already played. Vancouver did win. I believe if they end with the same record and no one else is tied with them, Vancouver will go through on that head-to-head tiebreaker. I'm not 100% sure on that, but Vancouver are in the driver's seat now. Both teams with 3 wins. Vancouver has the head-to-head tiebreaker. Vancouver plays twice, and Boston, unfortunately, this is their only week where they have 1 qualifier match. So hopefully they get a win. If they get a win, they can make it interesting. But yeah, it's a very interesting sweat to the finish here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this will be interesting. And then again, what that means for the odds to win the major. We'll be talking about that next week. Match preview. So first match of the week, Paris versus FaZe. FaZe is only minus 138 on the money line. That's a little low there. Minus 1.5 plus 162. Paris minus 125 in the hard point. They are the favorites in the hard point, but Vegas is the favorite in the search and in the overload. My model likes Vegas here. I think your model does a little bit as well, but I have a huge favorite here in the money line. My model has says Vegas should be favored in the hard point and the search here, and less so in the overload. But again, very clear favorites in those maps right there. What do you see here? Do you see this as a potential spot for Vegas? Like, they're favorites here. Do you think this is Paris potentially coming back, or do you think this is Vegas kind of sealing their spot in the major, in the
Yeah,
top, whatever the major?
that's a good question. So both of these teams have really struggled throughout the major two qualifiers. Vegas are in a slightly better spot than Paris right now, and I'd say based on the last couple weeks that makes a lot of sense. Vegas look like they're rebounding and getting back into their form. Paris, I think, just got caught in hardpoint. Like, they're just not that same hardpoint team that we saw at the beginning of the season, and I think it's time that maybe our expectations on Paris shift to, okay, if you're not going to be the far and away best hardpoint team, you still have to be above average, right? Like, it's very important to be good at hardpoint. And we still need to see some improvements in search and in overload, because both of those have been up and down throughout the year. And this is a great test. Like, Vegas are a solid search team and a solid overload team. I think my number on Vegas in map 3 is a touch high, just playing out how the vetoes might go. I think we'll get a den overload, which should favor Vegas, but not a ton. Like, your number's right at 50-50. I think that might actually be closer to the true number. Mine's at 65, so that's maybe a touch high. When you adjust that in, I think the market is smack on with this. Like, I think you have to make Vegas a slight favorite just based on what we've seen lately. But Paris, yeah, very live to get this done as well. If they can bounce back in hardpoint, or if they show those improvements in the map 2s and map 3s and 5s, sure, they could absolutely win this as well. So a huge match to kick things off on Friday. Super excited to watch it. If I had to pick a side with the price adjusted, I guess I'd still side with Vegas, but it is pretty close in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. Next up is Cloud9 versus Carolina. Carolina minus 800 on the money line. Carolina minus 2.5 plus 150. Carolina minus 600 in the hardpoint, minus 175 in the search, and minus 300 in the overload. And yeah, it's I kind of like the Cloud9 plus 2.5, vaguely on Cloud9 money line. I like Cloud9 in the search, but other than that, I don't see a lot of value here on anything here. I think this is a wash. What do you see in this one?
Yeah, model again is pointing me in the New York direction. I think it's just a stay away, honestly. Like, Cloud9 search has been pretty good lately. Like, not even average, like they've been all right. The problem is that Carolina have been a pretty consistently good search team all year. And yeah, their numbers are just so much better in hardpoint and overload. And they're not even that great in those modes either. It's just Cloud9 struggle to find consistency in those two modes. So yeah, it feels like Carolina should be able to get this done. But Cloud9 surprise us every now and then. There was obviously that series against Paris a few weeks ago. And then just last week, we're able to beat Toronto, who they have a lot of fans out there and a lot of people that believe in that Toronto team, and Cloud9 just snuck out the win. So for Cloud9, it's probably going to look like that moving forward. Like, you got to force the map 5 and bank on those search and destroys as much as you can. But yeah, to me, the market feels about right on this one. I've got it as an 80-20 for Ravens. And yeah, I don't know. I think my gut says that's about right. So maybe Cloud9 can get a map here, but Ravens, all things considered, should be able to get this done. They're clearly, like, not a great team, but at least a league average-ish team, and a league average-ish team should be able to beat New York relatively consistently.
Yeah. Friday, match 3, Vancouver versus G2. Minnesota, minus 225 on the money line, minus 1.5, minus 110, minus 188 in the hard point, minus 138 in the search, minus 188 in the overload. I got Minnesota here. I like them on the money line a little bit. I don't hate them on the minus 1.5. It's not great value, but there is a little bit of value there. I like them in the search. Other than that, again, another one where there's not a lot of value here, but I do like them in a small play in Minnesota here. Yeah.
I'm with you. Like, our numbers are mirroring each other really closely in map 1, map 2, and map 3. To me, if I was going to take Minnesota here, I'd probably take them on the money line. Like, their bread and butter is search and destroy. They are one of the best teams in that game mode. Surge clearly weak in that game mode, although they've been getting a little better through the Major 2 qualifiers. And honestly, Surge's hardpoint has improved a lot from where we were at the start of the year. So hardpoints, I think, are going to be close, maybe closer to a 50-50. I think, all likelihood is these teams split map 1 and map 4. But yeah, the overload is just, it's a huge problem for Surge. Like, they just do not have a good overload map whatsoever. It's not even that they have one that's okay and the other two are bad. Like, they're all bad. And that's a huge problem because if you're the other team, just veto the one that you're struggling with, and odds are you should be a pretty heavy favorite in that map 3. So Minnesota honestly can just get this done with searches and overload, but all things considered, I think good enough to split in hardpoint. I know Minnesota can be up and down at times, but yeah, they are a clear cut above Surge in my opinion. So I'm with you. If I had to pick a side here, I would take Minnesota in this spot, but Surge can be scrappy at times, but I think it's a good bounce back for Minnesota here.
Yeah. Moving on, Miami versus Carolina. Miami minus 225 on the money line. Miami minus 1.5 plus 100. Miami minus 175 in the hard point, minus 163 in the search, and minus 150 in the overload. I like Miami here. I like Miami money line. I like the minus 1.5, especially in the search here. My model's weirdly high on Miami search, but they've been pretty good, so that's not really a thing here. Again, it's just these are two teams that are middle ground, and that's why this whole season is so hard to evaluate, right? You've got two middle ground teams, but I think Miami's on the higher end of the middle ground and Carolina's on the lower end of the middle ground. And like in a case like that, you should be covering that minus 1.5. You really shouldn't be. But then again, that being said, this is going to be the same as last week. Carolina will win 3-0. That's the thing. That's how crazy this season has been. What do you see in this game?
Yeah, so I think I agree with you. Again, my model is kind of steering me away from either side here, but yeah, Miami have just been really good lately. Like, you look at their last few weeks, they've been above average hardpoint, above average search, above average in overload. Like, your number on search is really high, but like they've won 6 straight searches. That's impressive against some good teams too. Like Minnesota are in there, Thieves are in there, Falcons, Surge, and Cloud9 maybe not so good, but 6 straight is awesome. 3 of those were in around 11. Maybe that flips the other way if they get into a search that goes the distance. And Ravens are a solid search team, no doubt capable of beating them in that game mode, but it's just tough to make a case for Ravens, right? Like, I have them as slight underdogs across the board. And when I see that, it really comes down to overload. Like, that map 3 is a hinge game mode. And again, that's just where I have a little more faith in Miami. And just with how Miami look lately, yeah, they've been super, super impressive. So if I had to take a side, I'd go with you in Miami in this spot. Looked great last week, didn't lose a map in 2 matches last week. Ravens, a good team, but nothing special, I'd say. Like, Ravens are just a solid team, like a team that you'd expect the top teams in the league to beat fairly easily, but right, a Cloud9, a Surge might, struggle a little bit with that Ravens team. So yeah, interested to see this one, how it plays out, because if Miami look anything like what they've looked lately, this should be another quick series for them. Yeah, give me Miami.
Yeah. We'll see. Again, that means it's going to be a Carolina 3-0. That's right. How that works. Saturday, match 2, FaZe versus Cloud9. FaZe minus 8,000 on the money line, minus 2.5, minus 163. FaZe minus 5,000 in the hard point, minus 250 in the search, and minus 800 in the overload. And here you go. This is it. This is it right here, right? It's weird, right? Because there was nothing in any of the cases that Cloud9 should have been competitive there against Toronto, right? It's so weird how this team they are horrible. They're like the worst 3-0s I've ever seen, and then they'll like randomly beat a team that's actually like a good team, like a top 5 team or something. It's crazy, and I think because of that, my model keeps giving them the benefit of the doubt here on the plus 2.5. It's kind of a win one map, generally an overload. But that's the thing. It's just, I don't believe this. I don't believe it enough to bet minus 2.5 at minus 163, but I don't want to bet this plus 2.5 at plus 120. I don't want to do that, right? So this is the problem Cloud9 always puts us in, where if this team is better than that, but are they actually going to be better than that today? I don't know. The answer is no for that. So, yeah, what do you think on this one?
Yeah, so Cloud9, to me, I know your numbers seem to indicate like the map 3 is maybe where they can pick up a map on. And I agree, like their overload has been better lately, but to me their search has been, I don't want to say impressive, but at least like a mode that they can bank on to get wins. The problem is Vegas are one of the best search teams in the game. If that map 2 isn't your map pick and it's phases, that might be an uphill battle. And I don't know if they have the firepower in hardpoint. They've looked really bad in that game modes with the new lineup. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough to see them how they force that game 5. If they get to the game 5, I think they're certainly live to win the series, but it's just going to be such a tough ask, I think, to get them all the way to that game 5. So yeah, to me, I don't know. Last week I mentioned like Cloud9, I think were like plus 240 in map 2 in both of their series. And I said, hey, just maybe the play is play both of those and see if they can win one search because their search has been all right. And sure enough, they won all 3 searches they played last week. None of them went to a round 11 either. Like, they're not like just getting by. They've been solid. If you're Vegas, this is a game you got to win, right? This is like your layup to end the Major 2 qualifiers, to maybe get you in that top 6 where you don't have to play into the bracket at all. You're just in it. I don't think Vegas are going to play around with any cute vetoes or anything like that. I think they're just going to play straight up to win as quickly as possible. They're not going to mess around whatsoever. If you're going to play Cloud9, like, I'd steer clear of the plus 2.5 and just go straight to the map 2, because that is really the only thing I can see going their way. Yeah, it feels like a quick series, and yeah, Vegas should be able to get this done pretty quick.
Yeah, probably. But again, if suddenly this was like a 3-1, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
If Cloud9 found a way to win a game, would not be surprised. Match 3, Riyadh versus Optic. This should actually be an interesting game. Texas minus 450 in the money line. Texas minus 1.5, minus 163. Optic minus 225 in the hard point, minus 275 in the search, and minus 200 in the overload. My model is mostly in agreement with the number on Optic here, but it wants to tip it a little bit to the Riyadh plus 1.5. It says, hey, Riyadh's got a chance to cover here, specifically in the hard point and in the control, in the overload. I don't know. I've bet the plus 1.5. I don't know how I feel about the plus 300. I think it's a weird scenario where, like, my model just thinks that, like, Riyadh has no chance of winning the search and destroy, which seems a little low. But it definitely gives them a chance in the hard point and in the overload. What do you see here? What options do you have here?
Yeah, so the cleanest thing I see in this series is the map 3. And this has been a big thing for Falcons over the last few weeks, is they've been able to bank on map 3s to get wins, in part because I think they're just done playing Den Overload. 2-5 on the year. Not awful, but not good. Exposure and Scar, 10-2 overall on those 2 maps. And I have them first on Exposure, second on Scar. Like, they have 2 maps where they're going to be favored against pretty much every team in the league. Like, they just are not losing those. Like, last week they did lose 6-2 on Scar against Miami. Miami red hot right now. That happens. Other than that, though, they are just crushing it in map 3s. Optic, obviously a very good overload team as well. So I think they're just going to square up on one of these really good maps for Falcons, and I think your number's pretty close. Like, I think it is a true 50-50 in that map 3. Search it is a problem for Falcons. That's the big bugaboo for them, and Optic are maybe the best search team in the game right now. But this is the kind of team I like for an upset potentially, but at least a team to force that map 5 if we get there. Like, Falcons have been improving at hardpoint. Their search is not great, but it's not like they're the worst team in the league in that game mode. And their overload, I think, can go toe-to-toe with Optic. So I think they could force a long series here. Like, I think Optic definitely have to be the favorite. They are just steamrolling pretty much everyone they play, but I think Riyadh could do what Paris did last weekend and just weasel out a couple close maps, get this to a map 5, and we'll see how the chips fall when we get there. I think if you are Falcons, hopefully you can get the series done before map 5 because you just can't bank on search and destroys. But even if you are able to go the distance with Optic, I think that gives Falcons a ton of confidence that they could get it done. Yeah, I like Falcons here to cover that 1.5. I think the money line's priced about accurately, but just the fact that they can rely on hardpoint and overload, that's huge for the plus 1.5. Yeah, I think Falcons are very interesting here.
Yeah, for sure. Last match on Saturday, Thieves versus Minnesota. Thieves minus 225 on the money line. Thieves minus 1.5 plus 100. Thieves minus 175 in the hard point. Minus 138 in the search. And minus 200 in the overload. My model likes Minnesota here. A little surprising, but Thieves are just, there's something off about them. They're just not the dominant team I think they can be or need to be in this case. I especially like the +1.5. Kind of using the hard point a little bit, but not. I just don't like Minnesota as much. Like Minnesota in the search, and then like Thieves in the overload. But yeah, this is a match that, like, if Thieves were a top team, you'd be much more comfortable. You'd be much more confident in them. -1.5 shouldn't be +100.
Yeah, no, I'm with you again on Minnesota. Minnesota may be interesting this week just because they had that series last week where they were 3-0'd by Ravens. Bounced back against Breach, but that was a 3-1. That map 1 was pretty close. Maybe a bit of a down week for Minnesota, but I don't know if Thieves are this much better than them. Like, I think both of these teams are in the same tier. Like, they're not even close to Optic, but for that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right, that kind of next pocket of teams, I think you can argue both of these teams are in that mix. They're built very differently, right? Minnesota rely on search and destroy. They're one of the best teams in that game mode, so I'm really surprised to see them at even money in map 2. And yeah, again, both of our models are like, yeah, Minnesota 60-40 favorite in search. Makes sense. Thieves have lost 5 straight searches, and only one of those was around 11. 4 of those not super close. Minnesota have been solid in search lately. They did lose both of the ones they played last weekend, but again, they're just reliable in that game mode. And honestly, overload, like, I don't know, it's pretty straight up where I think Thieves are the best Scar overload team. Minnesota not good at that. They'll probably throw that out. Minnesota league average on den and exposure. Thieves the same. I think that's probably close to a 50-50 as well. Yeah, I think my numbers actually may be a touch low on Minnesota. Like, I really think this is a true coin flip at this point. So Thieves, if they get it done, it's probably a 3-1 because they can bank on those hard points, and maybe the overload goes their way. But again, for Minnesota, right, like, just push it the distance, get that second search and destroy, and bank on that game mode because they've been so good at it this year. Last week, maybe not the best, but search can be fluky at times. So I think Minnesota here have a really nice price. I really think this is a very competitive series.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sunday, match 1. Vancouver versus Riyadh -350. Riyadh -1.5, -150. -275 in the hard point, -163 in the search, and -200 in the overload. Yeah, I really don't have much in this game. I'm basically like, that's the line, a little lower, that's mostly the same, that's higher. I don't see much here at all. Maybe you take a shot at the -1.5, but this year has been so fluky, I wouldn't even dare to do that. I wouldn't touch that. Sorry. It's late in the afternoon here. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Do you see any value here or not? I don't really see much value in this game, in this match.
Yeah. So as far as the money line or the spread on the series, I don't see a ton. I do think Falcons are a clear cut above, and I think the -1.5 at -150 I'd rather have than the +1.5 at +110 on the other side. But Surge, right, the one thing that gives me pause is that Surge's hard point has been like pretty league average over the course of these major 2 qualifiers. And league average for them is like awesome. They can maybe win 2 of those, although Falcons have been rapidly improving in that game mode as well. I think my number on the map 1 is about right. I think my number on the map 2 is about right. Like, maybe you give Falcons a slight edge, but neither of these teams really bank on search and destroys with consistency. The one thing that catches my eye is the map 3, and your model's even higher on it than I am. Yeah, just a complete misprice. Like, Surge rarely win a map 3. Falcons have been awesome in that game mode lately, and like I said before, they're the best and second best on exposure and Scar. Surge don't have anything that they can rely on in that game mode. So, assuming we get one of those maps, like, you have one of the best teams on an overload map against, I think, pretty clearly the worst overload team in the league. So, yeah, to me, that map 3 should be priced way higher, like -300, -400. But it's only -200. I know that sounds weird to say only -200, but yeah, something just does not add up there. So I think, if anything, take Falcons in map 3, but if you want to take a -1.5, go right ahead. If you want to take a -2.5 and just say they're better across the board and they look good lately, I won't blame you for that either. So yeah, it's all Falcons here for me, for sure.
Yeah. But it's still, though, it's so iffy because you're just like, what if Vancouver just decides to be good this game and Riyadh doesn't? Like, this year it's just so everywhere. It's just all over the map. It's so all over the map. It's weird. Match 2, Paris versus Thieves. Paris minus 125 on the money line. So that Paris is the favorite in this game, which is nuts, but it makes sense if you like really price in recent Paris results and you really price in recent Thieves results. Paris minus 1.5 plus 200. Paris minus 125 in the hard point, minus 150 in the search, and then Thieves are actually the favorite in the overload. I've got a massive difference here. My model still hates Paris. I think as it should. Yeah, everything here. Money line, plus 1.5. My model would, I'd probably say my model would probably favor a Thieves minus 1.5. Money line in the hard point, in the search, and even in the overload here as well. Which is weirdly, the overload is the only one my model agrees with the books on. What do you see in this one?
Yeah, again, I think it's priced about right. So Paris, this is a heck of a weekend to end on. You get Vegas in that very first match of the weekend, a team that you're fighting with to not have to be in that play-in game, and an LA Thieves team that has looked pretty good. If you just look at the Major 2 qualifiers in aggregate, like Thieves have been a solid team and better than Paris, honestly. But, right, you go back to the Major 1 qualifiers at Major 1, Paris were the better team there. I think they're improving. I know they weren't able to beat Optic, but they at least showed some signs that the search is getting better. The overload is maybe more competitive than we think. If that hard point can come back, like, they're not that far off. And I don't think Thieves are a bad team either. I think they have been very competitive. I really struggle with this one a lot. And, yeah, my models, yeah, it's a coin flip. Like, you tell me who's the favorite. So, yeah, it's tricky. I think if you're LA Thieves, you feel good about map 3. Like, they are a nice favorite in map 3. I think they should be. They're better on 2 of the 3 overload maps. So if the vetoes go as expected, I think, yeah, 65-35 favorite in that map 3. Split your hard points, split your searches. You should be okay. But, yeah, Paris showed at least enough last week where I'm not, like, super, super worried about them going into Major 2. Now, if they lose both series this weekend, then I'm concerned, and honestly, they are in jeopardy of, like, being the last team in that sort of situation, and yeah, I mean, that's just crazy to think about with how good this team looked just a month and a half ago, really. But yeah, it's so tricky. So I think this is just a wait and see, kick back and watch this one. Should be good, and yeah, I hope Paris don't limp into Major 2, because I think that will be a bit of a disappointment if they look that shaky.
Yeah. We'll see. Again, they won the last one, and now it's not been the same since Major 1 for them. And we'll talk about them next week, specifically in the frame of the Major and what that means. Moving on to the second last match of the weekend, Miami versus Boston. Miami minus 400 the money line, minus 1.5, minus 163. In the hard point, minus 300 for Miami, minus 175 in the search, and minus 200 in the overload. And yeah, my model likes Miami considerably here. My model really likes that minus 1.5 there. All in all, my model is just very low on Boston here. I think probably because of the search. Again, when my model really likes team and search, that really compresses the thing down, especially when you factor in Game 5. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is... There's a good option here on... I think there's some value here in Miami. It's not a ton of value, and it's, again, scary because maybe Boston will be good this one game, because this is probably their last chance to even maybe potentially even make it to the Major, depending on how the weekend shapes up. But, again, Miami, I think, is the far better team. They should be able to do this, but they're probably going to be, like, at this point for the last game, they're probably going to be locked into the winner's bracket, probably, so they're not going to have to play. But Boston's going to have to win this game, so I'm not sure how much you want to bet. I will be betting on Miami, but I don't know how much you want to bet on Miami in this case, though. What do you see here?
Yeah, so I initially had actually Boston plus 1.5 in our picks that we'll go over at the end, and I came off of that. I dug deeper into the numbers, and it is just scary with Boston. Like, they are very up and down, but lately it's been more down than up, and Miami are, like, one of the hottest teams in the game right now. And I think that gives me enough pause to say, like, all right, the market's probably pretty right on this. I know Miami seem like a big favorite, but they've earned it at this point. But Boston do this weird thing every now and then where they show up to a series and maybe win it when they shouldn't, or at least make it very interesting. I think Boston are very live to do that again, but it is hard to see what game mode that comes through with. Yeah, they're just inconsistent across the board, which again can be good. Like they have a win over Vegas in this qualifier period. They have a win against Riyadh way back mid-February, but they've got those. And yeah, the interesting thing with this one is Boston gotta have this. Like you really gotta win this to get your spot back into the play-in games, because if you don't, like Serge should be able to box you out without any problem. So Miami on the flip side might just be locked into a winner's bracket start. Like they don't even have to play in. They might just be all the way through, maybe as a 2 seed, 3 seed, 4 seed, something like that. So you would obviously like to win this to improve your seeding or keep yourself locked in where you are, but if Miami do want to play the veto game and try to play some maps that they're not great at, that Boston, that's where it could get interesting. So there's just too many variables in this series with how volatile Boston are, how volatile, honestly, Miami can be at times, and just how the vetoes play out. Like all of that is leading me away from just picking anything in this game. So I think Boston can keep it competitive, but it is hard to see with how good Miami have looked lately.
It is, right? And maybe Miami just decides we'll just play random maps. We don't care, but we'll have to see. Maybe maybe this will be like the throwaway game, the test other maps game, or maybe they just say, yeah, no, let's just go kill Boston. I don't know. Let's go knock them out of the major, right? So who knows? Last match of the weekend: Toronto versus Optic minus 500 on the money line, Optic minus 1.5, minus 163, minus 250 in the hard point, 275 in the search, and minus 188 in the overload. Yeah, some slight value on Optic here, but again, some of these teams have been just so all over the place that, like, if you told me Toronto forced a game 5, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, it wouldn't be like, oh no, that's impossible. I'd be like, yeah, okay. That's how weird these teams have been this season. They're just all over the place, and I have no idea if a team is if they're like a good team or not. Like Toronto, I think that this is a game where they, depending on how the weekend shakes out, they might need this game to get into a winner's bracket potentially. I think they're mostly okay though, but potentially. Optic is going to be locked in number 1 seed. They're done. I'm not sure if it's been locked in officially yet or not, but they're done basically. They're the 1 seed. Even if they lose this game, maybe this is now Optic's going to just try to play some fun maps here and try to gain some more experience or not. I don't know.
Yeah. This is an interesting game to end on for sure because, yeah, we have an Optic team that is locked into the 1 seed, but they're playing a team that I think with a win could catapult up to that top 6, and with a loss, they should be safe regardless. Like, they're at 5 wins right now, Toronto, and this is their only match of the weekend, and it's the very, very last one. So they'll know exactly what a win means versus what a loss means for them. I don't think they're in jeopardy of just completely losing their spot at all. In fact, that might not even be possible. I guess maybe it could be if they get into a tiebreaker situation and doesn't go their way. But yeah, the way I see this, so Toronto, league average hardpoint, pretty good overload, like sneaky good overload, horrible search. And again, that's the kind of underdog I want going up against one of these top teams, especially to cover that 1.5, right? Like, if I think Toronto could split hard points, that's awesome. Let me look to overload now. I think Texas are just going to play this, hey, let's get some good practice in before the Major 2 bracket kicks off next weekend. Toronto are one of the best den overload teams in the game. We're one of the best den overload teams in the game. I think they're just going to square up on den in that map 3. I think it's going to be really fun to watch. And I think that makes my number, like, both of us are hovering in that 40-60 range on map 3. If it's den, it is like a true 50-50 in my opinion. So maybe Toronto's number goes from 44% to cover to 50% to cover. And yeah, I think Optic could play that game of, hey, Toronto are a solid team. Let's play some maps we're not used to, see if we can expand the map pool a little bit. We got nothing to lose. It's 10 CDL points at the end of the day if we do lose, but if you're Optic, like, you should be able to win this series. Like, you should have the confidence to play Toronto on a map pool that maybe isn't your ideal map pool. So I like that for Toronto. I actually think the schedule broke out kindly to them. I know ending against Optic is not easy, but you should be safe. I think Optic are willing to play you on your better maps, and I think that at least makes this series interesting. So if I had to take a side, I'd take Toronto here. I just think Optic have shown enough inconsistencies at times where they might not go perfect. Like, Toronto are a capable team. They could beat Optic. And I think Optic going 11-0 isn't like a huge thing that they're aspiring to. I think it's awesome if they get there. But I think the map pool thing and all that is more important to them. So Toronto, make it interesting.
Yeah. We'll have to see. And I think that will be something I'm watching for too, right? Maybe throw some on the Toronto. They are a competitive team. They could make a competitive game here. So Model Warfare. So my picks for this week, I am going FaZe against Paris. I'm going Miami -1.5, -163 against Boston. I don't love it, but probably among one of the better values on the board. And then I'm doing Minnesota -1.5 versus Vancouver. So maybe getting a 3-1 or a 3-0 there against Vancouver. What picks do you have this week?
Yeah, I'm doubling up on Falcons again. I love what I've seen from them lately. I think that map 3 against Surge is just a complete misprice. Like, they're -200, which is a big number, but they really should be -300, -400 in that specific game mode, just with how bad Surge have been and how good Falcons have looked on overloads lately. I'm sticking with Falcons in that series versus Optic. Again, it's scary, but I took Paris +1.5 at the same price last week. They were just able to get it done. I think Falcons maybe are even more competitive than Paris, especially if they can get a hard point done. I think they're very live to cover that 1.5. And then Minnesota against LA Thieves. Again, I think that is close to a coin flip series, but they are pricing in LA Thieves as a huge favorite. Again, I think Overload is the crucial game mode in that specific series, because I think Minnesota can bank on those searches, or at least split searches and hard points with Thieves. Yeah, Falcons and G2 for me, and I am super, super excited to see how the bracket shakes out for next week.
Yeah. Other than that, we have the combined model plays for this week. The combined model plays, we've got Cloud9 moneyline +2.5. We've got Minnesota moneyline -1.5, map 2. Cloud9 +2.5 for Saturday. Riyadh +1.5. Minnesota moneyline and map 2 there. I believe that's against Thieves. Yep. And then we've got Riyadh map 3 there to close it out on Sunday. That's the Riyadh versus Okay. Other than that, we will be back next week before Thursday. So we're probably gonna be recording hopefully relatively early week, depending on when they get the lines out. We'll probably be recording on Tuesday or Thursday. I'm probably on maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. Probably Tuesday, Wednesday. It'll be out by Thursday. Other than that, have a good week, everybody, and we'll see you next week.